So let's show how all of this works through an example. So with this example, I'm going to show you through numbers how those different cases for that total revenue test come about. So if the price of a good or service increases from $50 to $70, the quantity demanded decreases from 220 to 180. Got to solve these three questions. What is the price elasticity of demand coefficient? Number two, what is the effect on total revenue? And then number three, what is the effect on total revenue if the price goes from 70 to 50? So instead of going from 50 to 70, like we're doing here in questions 1 and 2, we're going to go from 70 to 50 in question 3. So starting with number 1, price elasticity of demand coefficient. We know that it's the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. Now in previous examples, I showed the numerator and denominator portion separately, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine everything into this whole one fraction. A lot of textbooks show everything combined into one fraction, and so that's what I'm going to do here in this example. But if you feel more comfortable, you can do what I did before, so you can calculate this separately, and then combine them after. So the percentage change in quantity demanded, demand is going from 220 to 180. So that portion, the numerator, I'm going to represent that with square brackets. It's going to be the absolute value of the change. So it's going to be 180 minus 220. So that quantity demanded is going down, but we put an absolute value. Everything has to be positive. And that's going to be all over the average quantity. So it's going to be the 220 plus the 180. We're going to divide that by 2, like that. So this whole thing here, got a separate fraction there. This whole thing represents the numerator, that percentage change in quantity demanded, and that's going to be all over the percentage change in price. The price is going up from 50 to 70, so it's going to be the absolute value of 70 minus 50 all over 70 plus 50 divided by 2. Now, again, because this is an absolute value here, it doesn't matter what order you put these. You could do 180 minus 220, you could do 220 minus 180, 50 minus 70, 70 minus 50. It's going to change to a positive anyway, and then this order doesn't matter either. Right? You're going to get the same value for that bracket, whether you do 180 plus 220 divided by 2 or 220 plus 180 divided by 2. Okay, so what's going to happen here is we're going to end up with, here it's going to be 40 divided by 200. Right, this is going to be 40 divided by 200, the midpoint between 220 and 180. And so we would end up getting 0.2 for this entire square bracket there. And over here, we're going to end up with 20 over 60, which is going to be 1 over 3, which is 0.33, approximately, repeating. And 0.2 divided by 0.33, we would end up getting approximately 0.6 for that. Okay, so 0.6 is the answer for number 1. That is the price elasticity of demand coefficient. So notice that this specific good or service that we're looking at, because it has a coefficient of 0.6, it is considered inelastic. Right, so that is the algebra for it. Now, let's move on to questions 2 and 3, dealing with the total revenue, which is what I kind of want to focus on in this video. So what is the effect on total revenue? Well, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to visually first display this. So we got price, we got quantity demanded. So the price went from 50 to 70. This is not to scale, by the way. Just kind of showing how it looks visually. And then the quantity demanded went from 220 to 180. So 180 is going to be here. Let's say 220 is over here. So at a price of 50, the quantity demanded is 220. And then when the price goes to 70, the quantity demanded goes from 220 to 180. Right here. So the demand curve is sort of looking like that for this specific good or service. So what's happening? What is the total revenue to the producer if the price is equal to $50? What's the total revenue going to be? Well, it's going to be $50 times 220. And 50 times 220 would give us 11,000. So that's the total revenue when the price is at 50. 50 times that quantity demanded, 220. That's the quantity sold, remember, as I mentioned in the previous video. So the total revenue is going to be 11,000 to the producer if the price is at 50, if we're dealing with this point. Now, what's the total revenue to the producer going to be if the price is 70? Well, it's going to be the price, 70, times that new quantity sold or quantity demanded, which is going to be 180. And that would give us 12,600. And so what happened as the price went from 50 to 70? Notice that the total revenue went from 11,000 to 12,600. So what is the effect on total revenue? The total revenue increased by 1,600. And that makes sense because when we showed the different cases in that chart, we know that the total revenue should increase with a price increase for an inelastic good. Because what happened was, even though that quantity demanded went down, it went down by a smaller percentage. It went down by 20% compared to that price increase. The price increase overtook that quantity demanded decrease. And so what happened was that total revenue ended up increasing as a result, as a net effect. And so that's how you can see with numbers how those cases are coming about. Now, what's the effect on total revenue if we went the other way, if we went from 70 to 50? Well, notice that the total revenue would go down by 1,600. So the answer to number 3, total revenue decreases by 1,600. If we go from 70 to 50. Because in that case, if we're going this way, the quantity demanded increased, yeah, but it increased at a lower amount than that price decrease. The price decrease overtook the quantity increase. And so what happens is that there's a net decrease then in revenue. And more specifically, it's by $1,600. So that's how you can, with numbers, see how that total revenue effect is coming about, because at any point on the demand curve, the total revenue is always going to be that price of that point times the quantity demanded or the quantity sold of that point. And when you're comparing 2 points, you can just compare those total revenue figures and see what is happening.